Hello students, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So here I am with this part 2 of chapter 2. That is first part we have already done of this chapter 2 supply and GST. In this video we'll move further. This is the part 2 of supply under GST. Part 2 of detailed discussion. Okay. So let's start with taxability of cost petroleum. When an oil exploration and production contractor gets a license or lease to explore or mine the petroleum crude and or natural gas from the government, it enters into a production sharing contract PSC with the government. The relationship of the contractor with the government is not that of partners but that of licensor, lessor and licensee or lessee. As per these contract means production sharing contract, when a contractor discovers oil or gas, he is at first entitled to recover the contract cost. Expenses incurred in contract cost means expenses incurred in exploration, development, production and payment of royalty involved in the contract of oil or gas from the total sale proceeds, and thereafter he is expected to share with the government the profit from his venture, that is known as profit petroleum as per PSC. So what is happening in this? A person is entering into a contract with the government. Means a contractor is there, some production contractor or oil exploration contractor. That contractor enters into a contract with the government, and that contract is known as production sharing contract. So that is not the contract of means they are not partners in this contract. They can be called as lessor lessee or licensor licensee. Okay. Lessor is government and lessee is the contractor. So or you can say government is the licensor and contractor is the licensee. Means government has given the license to the contractor of oil exploration to explore. So now as per this contract, what happens when contractor discovers any oil or gas from there? So he is at first entitled to cover the contract cost from total sale proceeds. Thereafter he is expected to share with the government. Now what happens when oil is explored? Then contractor is entitled, he'll recover all the contract cost from the sale proceeds. Means he'll discover the oil or gas, then he'll sell that. Then from the sale proceeds he's entitled to recover the contract cost, and whatever the profit remains, whatever the amount remains after recovering all the contract cost, that will be shared with the government, and that is known as profit sharing. Means profit from the venture is shared with the government, that is known as profit petroleum. So they are not partners, they are licensor licensee or lessor lessee. Means the contractor will discover oil, then he'll sell it, then from the sale proceeds he'll recover all the cost expenses. Means he'll recover all the contract expenses, and from the what remains after recovering the cost, that will be shared with the government. So that is known as profit petroleum. Now value of petroleum which the contractor is entitled to take in a year for recovery of contract cost is called cost petroleum. Suppose sale proceeds is 20 and contract cost is suppose 15. So this 15 is known as cost petroleum. Means the value of petroleum which the contractor is entitled to take in a year for recovery of cost is called cost petroleum. Further, the total value of petroleum produced and saved from contract area in a particular period as reduced by cost petroleum is called profit petroleum. Means 20 minus 15, 5, that is profit petroleum. And this profit petroleum is only shared with the government. The government share of profit petroleum, which is the consideration paid by the contractor to the central government for the services of grant of license or lease to explore or mine petroleum, crude and natural gas, is exempt from GST. Now as we can see, this is a consideration paid to the government. Government has given the license to the contractor to discover oil or gas, and in return contractor is paying the consideration to the government. Means this profit sharing, the profit from the venture that is shared with the government, that can be called as a consideration that is paid to the government in. And the supply, what is the supply that is made by the government is providing the license, granting the license to explore or mine petroleum, and in return contractor is paying the share of from the means profit share from the venture. So this consideration that is paid, this is exempt from GST. Cost petroleum is not a consideration received by the contractor for the services provided to the government. It does not taxable per se. Means just 15 in our example, this 15 is not the consideration that is received by the contractor. for the services provided to the government. Contractor is providing services to the government. So this cost petroleum, that is not the consideration that is received. The reason for the same is that the contractor carry exploration and production of petroleum for themselves and not as a service to government. They had acquired the right to explore, exploit and sell petroleum in lieu of royalty and a share in the profit petroleum. So what happens in this entire scenario is that government has just given the license. The government has just granted the license to the contractor to mine, explore and mine the petroleum, crude and natural gas. So government has just given the license. This exploration is done by the contractor for themselves. They are not doing for the government. So we can't say they are providing any service to the government. So this cost petroleum is not called as a consideration. They have just got the right to explore, and they sell the petroleum, and after the setting of all the expenses, profit is shared with the government. Means they have to share the royalty, they have to share the profit petroleum, share in profit petroleum they have to share. So this cost petroleum is not the consideration. They had acquired the, read the last line again, they had acquired the right to explore, exploit and sell petroleum in lieu of royalty and a share in profit petroleum. So in return, means the contractor has acquired the right, and in return what they have to pay, they have to pay royalty and the share in profit petroleum. So there is only one service. Government has granted the license, and then contractor is extracting for themselves only, and in return they are paying the profit from the venture. They are sharing the profit from the venture with the government, and the profit, which is the consideration, and this profit sharing, this is called the consideration that is paid by the contractor to the government, and this is exempt from GST. So next one is financial transactions. Now financial transactions. Banks and financial institutions provide a bouquet of financial services relating to lending or borrowing of money or investments in money and such other related services. For such services, invariably a variety of instruments are used in financial markets. Means banks and financial institutions, they provide financial services. Okay. Now financial services relating to what? Relating to, they provide services of lending of money, they provide services of borrowing of money, then investment in money and such other related services. And for this, variety of instruments are used in financial markets. So in the following paras we have examined whether transactions in such instruments qualify as supply. As seen earlier, the definition of goods and services specifically excludes both money and securities. As from the definition, it was very clear. The definition we have already done in goods and services definition, both definition, money and securities was excluded from the definition. That means if there is any transaction, money and securities, that is not called as neither goods nor services. Means that is not covered. Means that we can't say it as supply. So what they have given further, the definition of money includes instruments like checks, drafts, pay orders, promissory notes, letter of credit, etc. So money includes all these instruments. So therefore transactions that are only transactions in such instruments would be outside the definition of service, as money is outside the definition of service. That means if these activities are included in the definition of money, therefore these activities are also outside the definition of service. Money would also include transaction in CP, commercial paper, and certificate of deposit, CD, as they are in the nature of promissory note. Issuance of drafts or letter of credit, etc. So these all are also included in the definition of money. So these are also excluded from the definition of supply. While this transaction would be outside the ambit of supply, the related activity for which a separate consideration is charged would be chargeable to GST if other elements of taxability are present. Therefore, GST would be levied on service charges normally charged for various transactions in money, including charges for making drafts, issuance charges for letter of credit, etc. Now, as these transactions, if this transaction is taking place, like transaction of the promissory note or letter of credit or this checks, drafts, so if this direct transaction, this is totally excluded, as it is included in money, and money is excluded from the definition of goods and services. So this transaction is excluded from the definition of supply. But if any related activity takes place, and if for that separate consideration is charged, means if any service charges is there in these instruments, like service charges, like charges for making draft, issuance charges. So these are charges, these are related activity, and for this separate consideration is charged. So these are service charges are not excluded from the definition of supply. This will be termed as supply, and the GST will be levied on that. Clear? These transactions are excluded, this instruments transactions are excluded from the definition of money, means definition of supply. But the any related activity which takes place, means any service charges, and for which a separate consideration is charged, so the service charges are included in the definition of supply. So means the service charges, therefore the term security shall have the meaning, shall have same meaning as assigned to it in clause H of section 2 of Securities Contract Act 1956, SECRA, section 2 subsection 101. So it means that securities which is defined in this act, the securities will have the same meaning. Let's read once. Commercial paper and certificate of deposit are understood as unsecured money market instruments. These are unsecured money market instruments which may be issued in the form of a promissory note or in a dematerialized form through any of the depositors. Okay, it can be issued in the form of promissory note, or it can be issued in dematerialized form. Dematerialized form, you all know, dematerialized form through any of the depositors approved by and registered with SEBI. Okay, it is approved and registered with SEBI. Depositories approved and registered with SEBI. So CPs are normally issued by highly rated companies, primary dealers, financial instruments, means financial institutions. They all issue the CP, and they issue at a discount to the face value. CD can be issued by scheduled commercial banks, excluding regional rural banks and local area banks, and all India financial institutions permitted by RBI. So commercial paper are unsecured debts, means are unsecured money market instruments, and they are issued by primary dealers, highly rated companies, and they are issued at a discount to the face value. Okay, and can be issued by scheduled commercial banks, including RRBs and local area banks. So this was about commercial paper certificate of deposit. Now next one, wait once. Next one is in terms of SECRA, section 2H of SECRA securities includes. Now over here, see the reference number 14 is given over here. See this 14. So this 14 reference they have given over here. So in terms of section 2H, 2 subsection H of SECRA securities includes shares, scrips, stocks, bonds, debentures, debenture stocks, or other marketable securities of a like nature or in order of any incorporated company or other body corporate. Derivative, so securities include shares, scrip stocks, derivative units, or any other instrument that is issued by a collective investment scheme to the investors in such scheme. Then it includes security receipt as defined in clause ZG of section 2 of Securities and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Securities Interest Act 2002. That in security includes units or any such instrument issued to the investors under any mutual fund scheme. Then government securities also included. Such other instruments that is as are declared by the CG to be securities, those are included. Rights or interest in securities. So this is the definition of securities that is given in SECRA, and this is inclusive definition as it's given. Security includes. So this is not the exhaustive definition. So you just have to read once these definitions. Now, in this regard, there may arise a doubt as to whether derivative is included within the meaning of securities. As you can clearly see in the definition over here, it's given securities includes C1A derivative. So, derivative is included in securities, and securities excluded from the definition of goods and services. So, it's not supply. See, in this regard, there may arise a doubt as to whether derivative is included with the meaning of securities above and whether derivatives are liable to GST. No, derivatives are included in the definition of securities and SECRA. As derivatives fall in the definition of securities, they are neither goods nor services and hence are not liable to GST. Clear? Now, what is the meaning of future contracts? These contracts are in the nature of financial derivatives, the price of which is dependent on the value of underlying stocks or index of stocks or certain approved currencies, and that the settlement happens normally by way of net settlement with no actual delivery. Now, future contracts, forward contracts. In forward contract, what happens? Everything is this value, this everything is at future, means predetermined. Price is predetermined. But in future contract, that's not the case. In future contract, the price is dependent on the value of underlying stock, and settlement normally happens by way of net settlement, and there is no actual delivery in this case. So this is in the nature of future contracts. We can say future contracts have the nature of financial derivatives. Now, what is the GST implication of future contracts? Since future contracts are in the nature of derivatives, this qualifies securities. So we can say it as securities, and thus they are not liable to GST, not subjected to GST. However, with the future contracts have a delivery option. Normally, future contracts have no delivery option, but if future contracts have a delivery option, settlement of contract takes place by way of actual delivery of underlying commodity or currency, then such forward contracts would be treated as then such future contracts would be treated as normal supply of goods and liable to GST. If there is case of physical delivery, then it will be treated as supply and it will be liable to GST. But now let's see what is given about forward contract. Forward contract is an agreement executed to purchase or sale at a predetermined amount. The purchase or sale amount is predetermined of a commodity or currency at a predetermined future date at a predetermined price. Means future date is predetermined, price is predetermined in this forward contract. So settlement could be by way of actual delivery of underlying commodity or currency, or by way of net settlement of differential of the forward rate over the prevailing market rate on the settlement date. Means there are two ways that can be done by way of actual delivery, or it can be done by way of net settlement. Now, what is the GST implication of forward contract in which everything is predetermined, future date and price is predetermined? So here, where the settlement takes place by way of actual delivery of underlying commodity or currency, then such forward contract would be treated as normal supply of goods and liable to GST. Like in case of future contract, if this settlement takes place by way of actual delivery, it's given away. It can be settlement can be done by way of actual delivery, or it can be done by way of net settlement. If it's done by way of net settlement, then no supply. But if it's done by actual delivery, then it is supply and liable to GST. Same is the case with future contracts. Now, next paragraph they have given where the settlement takes place by way of net settlement of differential of the forward rate over the prevailing market rate on the settlement date. The same would be falling within the purview of securities, that will be fall under the definition of securities and thus are not liable to GST. Now, in terms of section 2 subsection AC of SECRA, derivative includes. Now, what derivative includes? Securities include derivatives. Now, derivative includes a security derived from a debt instrument, share, loan, whether secure or unsecured, risk instrument or contract for differences, or any other form of security. These all are included in derivative. Means share, loan, whether they are secure or not, security derived from debt instruments, risk instrument or contract or for differences, or any other form of security included in derivative. Now, a contract which derive its value from prices or indexes of prices of underlying securities, that is also included in derivative. So the definition of derivative in SECRA is an inclusive definition. Again, it's given include, so it is an inclusive definition. Definition of derivative that is given in SECRA is an inclusive definition. Now, next topic. Next tax implication is about lending of securities under securities lending scheme. Securities and Exchange Board of India, that is SEBI, has prescribed securities lending scheme 1997, hereafter referred to as SLS. Okay. In short, the scheme is known as SLS, Securities Lending Scheme, for the purpose of facilitating lending and borrowing of security. The security lending scheme is depicted in the diagram below. See the the scheme. Lender is depositing securities in the approved intermediary. Then approved intermediary is providing securities to the borrower, is lending to the borrower. So means borrower wants to borrow the securities, he is borrowing though he is borrowing the securities of the lender, but he is borrowing via approved intermediary. Okay, so approved intermediary is the link between the lender and the borrower. Now see what is happening in the above diagram. They have explained lender is a person who deposits the security registered in his name or in the name of any other person duly authorized on his behalf with an approved intermediary for the purpose of lending under the scheme. Lender wants to lend his securities, so he deposits the securities which is registered in his name or in the name of any other person who is authorized in his behalf. So he deposits those securities in the approved intermediary for the purpose of lending. Now what happens? Borrower is a person who borrows the security under the scheme to the approved intermediary. The borrower wants to borrow the securities, so he'll borrow from the approved intermediary. Approved intermediary is a person duly registered by SEBI under SLS through whom the lender will deposit the securities for lending and the borrower will borrow the securities. Simple. Okay, lender will deposit to approved intermediary for the purpose of lending and borrower will borrow from the approved intermediary the securities. Now, under this scheme, lender of securities lends securities through an approved intermediary as to a borrower under an agreement. Under the scheme, lender of securities lends securities through an approved intermediary to a borrower under an agreement temporarily for a specified period. The lender earns lending fee for lending the securities to the borrowers. As this lender is lending the securities, in return he'll get lending fee. Now, securities are lent with a condition. What is the condition for lending the security? Condition is that the borrower will return equivalent securities of the same type or class at the end of the specified period, along with corporate benefits accruing on the securities borrowed. Now, corporate benefits are that only dividend and all. It's given over here. Corporate benefits includes dividend, means gross dividend, rights, bonus, redemption benefits, interest, or any other rights or benefit accruing on the securities lent. Okay, accruing on the securities borrowed, the borrower securities can further sell or buy these securities. Now, what is the condition of this lending? Lender is lending the securities. In return, he is getting lending fees, and the securities are lent for a specified period. After the end of the specified period, borrower is bound to return the equivalent securities of same type or class with the corporate benefits, means with gross dividend, rights, bonus, etc. Okay. Now, in order to lend securities under SLS, lender enters into an agreement with the approved intermediary, and for the purpose of borrowing a securities, the borrower enters into an agreement with the approved intermediary. They both have to enter into an agreement with the approved intermediary. Then only one can lend and one can borrow. Thus, there is no direct agreement between the lender and borrower for lending or borrowing securities, and there is no anonymity between them. They don't know each other. There is no direct agreement between them. He is lending, means a person is lending through via approved intermediary, and borrower is borrowing via approved intermediary. The transaction takes place through an electronic screen based order matching mechanism provided by the recognized stock exchange in India. As seen earlier in this chapter, securities are neither covered in the definition of goods nor covered in the definition of services. Therefore, these are securities only, na? So, securities is neither covered in goods nor covered in services. Therefore, transaction securities which involve disposal of securities is not a supply in GST and hence not taxable. So, as securities are not covered in the definition of the services, therefore we can say a transaction is secure if there is any disposal of securities, if there is transaction in securities and the transaction involves disposal of securities, that is not a supply. If there is disposal of securities, if there is any transaction in securities, that is not supply and that is not taxable. But what happens in this case, the SLS doesn't treat lending of securities or disposal of securities. This lending is for a specified period. Lender is just lending his securities. He is not disposing the securities. Securities are not disposed of in this case. There is just lending of securities for a specified period. So this is not disposal of securities. So SLS doesn't treat lending of securities or disposal of securities, and therefore is not excluded from the definition of services. That's why this lending of securities is included in the definition of service. The lending fee charged from the borrower securities has the character of consideration and is taxable under GST. The lending fee which is paid by the borrower to the lender, that can be said as a consideration for the lending, and that is taxable under GST. As lending and disposal both are different terms. Lending is not disposal. Apart from above, the activities of intermediaries facilitating lending and borrowing of securities for commission or fee are also taxable separately. There is also one services lender is lending securities to borrower, for that borrower is paying lending fees. Now, one more service is there, the service of intermediary. Intermediary is facilitating lending or borrowing securities, and in return intermediary is getting commission or fees, so that is also taxable separately. So, GST implication on secured debt, sale, purchase, acquisition, assignment of secured debt doesn't constitute a transaction money. It is in the nature of a derivative and hence a security. GST implication secured debt, sale, acquisition, purchase, assignment of secured debt, that is not transaction money. It is in the nature of derivative and hence a security. As we can see from the definition of derivative which we have done just now. See, derivative includes a security derived from a debt instrument. So this debt instrument security that is derived from debt instrument is included in the definition of derivative. So this can be said as derivative. That is only written over here. Sale, purchase, acquisition, assignment of secured debt doesn't constitute a transaction money. It is in the nature of derivative and hence it is a security. Now GST implication, if it is a security, that means no supply. GST implication on transaction instruments. Transaction instruments like interest rate swaps, foreign exchange swaps would be excluded from the definition of supply. Since such instruments are derivative, this swaps, interest rate swaps, foreign exchange swaps, this all are not supply as these are derivatives, being securities based on contract of difference. Okay, this was also given in the definition of derivative. See, a contract which by the a contract which derives value from the price or index of the underlying assets. So being securities based on contracts of difference securities are based on the difference amount. So this is also covered in derivative. However, it is important to note that if some service charges or service fees or documentation fees or broking charges or such like fees or charges are charged on the derivatives of future contracts or forward contracts, the same would be consideration for provision of service and subject to GST. Now this transaction is of security, this is derivative, so this is we can say covered in the definition of comes under the ambit of securities and it is not supply. But again, if there is any service charge or service fees in this case, like any fees or services charged on the derivative of future contracts or forward contracts, that service is the separate consideration. That would be consideration of the provision of service, and on that GST will be levied. Now GST implication on service by way of extending deposits, loans or services. So services by way of extending deposits, loans or advances insofar as the consideration is represented by way of interest or discount is exempt from levy of GST. So the service charges, though it is any service, if there is any service charges for extending deposit, loans or advances, that is GST will be levied, but it is specifically exempted. It is specifically covered under the exemption list. So services which is charged for providing by way of extending deposits, loans or advances by way of interest or discount, that is specifically exempted from the levy of GST. In the subsequent paras, we have discussed the exceptions to the two parameters of supply. Supply made for consideration but not in the course of furtherance of business, supply made without consideration. Remember the parameters which we studied in supply, that should be supply, it should be for a consideration, it should be in the course of furtherance of business. Now we are going to discuss about the exceptions to these conditions. First one is that the supply is made for a consideration but not in the course of business. Though it is made for a consideration but it is not in the course of business, then also it will be called as supply. And second scenario, we'll study that the supply that is made without a consideration, though it is made without consideration, though the condition is not satisfied, then also it is supply. So exceptions to this conditions. The first one is importation of services for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. This we have discussed over there also. Let's read it again. The connotation of supply gets expanded significantly through the second part of section 7, that is 7 subsection 1 clause B, which brings within the ambit of supply the remember 7.1a, 7.1b, which we did at the time of doing that definition of supply. So this is covered in 7.1b. The importation of services for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. This is the only exception to the condition of supply being made in the course of furtherance of business. As we know that the transaction will be considered as supply only when it is made in the course of business. But only one exception to this condition, to this parameter, is that if importation of services is there and if it is made, means it is this importation of services is done and not in the course of business, then also it will be termed as supply. Okay, means it is for importation of services, it is not necessary that it should be made in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, even if it is not made in the course of business, then also it will be considered as supply. So this is only the exception. Now see the example. Ramaiah, proprietor, has received architect services for his house from an architect located in New York at an agreed consideration of $5,000. The import of services by Ramaiah is a supply under 7 subsection 1 clause B, though it is not in the course of furtherance of business. Now Ramaiah is taking architect services for his house, so it is not in the course of business. So importation of services there, and it is not in the course of business. Though even if it is not in the course of business, then also it will be considered supply, but not as per 7.1a, but as per 7.1b. Okay. Suppose in this example Ramaiah would have taken architect services for his business, then it would be termed as supply under under section 7.1a. Okay, then it would be termed as in the course of business. But in this case, as he has taken services for his house, then it will not be termed as in the course of business. Then also it is supply as per 7.1b. Now this was the first parameter, first exception to the condition. Now second exception to the condition, one more condition, one more parameter of supply is that it should be, consideration should be there, it should be with consideration. Now we'll study the cases where there is no consideration, then also it will be deemed as supply. So this is schedule 1. Certain activities are given in schedule 1, those activities are made without consideration, and even if it is made without consideration, then also those activities are treated as supply. So first one is permanent transfer, disposal of business assets where ITC, input tax credit, has been availed on such asset. If there is permanent transfer of, permanent disposal of business assets, and on those business assets if you have taken ITC, then only it will be treated as supply, though it is made without consideration. But if you have not availed ITC on those assets, then no GST will be charged. It will not be considered supply and no GST will be levied. Second one is supply of goods or services, or both between related persons or between distinct persons, as specified in section 25, when made in the course of furtherance of business, provided that gifts not exceeding 50,000 rupees in value in a financial year by an employer to an employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services, or both. So first, what they have given, if the supply is taking place between related person or between distinct person, that will study in detail about related or distinct person, that is given section 25. So if supply is taking place between related person or between distinct person, and if it is made in the course of furtherance of business, then only it will, and even if it is made without consideration, then no GST means, then it will be termed as supply, sorry, and GST will be levied. But there is one exception to this. If the gift is gift is given by supplier, means employer to employee, and that gift is not exceeding 50,000, means value of gift is up to 50,000, so less than equals to 50,000, that is exempted. It means if the gift value is less than equals to 50,000, then that will not be treated as supply. But if the gift value exceeds 50,000, then it will be treated as supply. Provided that gift not exceeding 50,000 means gift less than equals to 50,000 by an employer to employee, then shall not be treated as supply. Means if it is up to 50,000, then no supply. If it exceeds 50,000, then it is supply. Now supply of goods by a principal to his agent, whether agent undertakes to supply such goods on behalf of the principal, means goods is supplied by the principal to the agent. Now agent supplies such goods on the behalf of the principal then, and supply of goods by agent to principal where agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of principal, means second scenario is goods, agent is supplying goods to principal and agent receives such goods on behalf of principal. Okay, so principal agent relationship is given over here. The fourth one is import of service by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India in the course of furtherance of business. Remember this fourth condition properly. Import of service we have done in 7.1b also, and over here also import of service is there. Slight difference is there. See what is given over here. It's given import of service by a person from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India. Means service is imported from a related person, or service is imported from any other establishment outside India, and that import of service is in the course of furtherance of business. It's not given here whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. It is given in the course of furtherance of business. Means service should be imported. Second condition is that it should be imported from a related person or from any of his other establishment outside India, and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. So if this service is made, and if it is made even without consideration, then it fall under schedule 1 and it will be termed as supply. and in 7(1)(b) it was given import or service was done, and that was not done from the related person. That was just import of service was mentioned over there, means service is imported, and even if it is made without, means outside the course of business, if it is not in the course of business, then also it is termed as supply. Okay, so this related person was not there in 7(1)(b), and this whether or not in the course of business was there in 7(1)(b), and that is not there in schedule 1. So there is slight difference in this. So let's recap once. 4 conditions, means 4 points are there in schedule 1. When there is permanent transfer disposal of business assets for which ITC has been taken. Second one is supply of goods or services between related or distinct person, and exemption is up to 50,000 value of gift by employer to employee. Third one is supply of goods between principal and agent. Fourth one is import of services from a related person in the course of furtherance of business. So these are the 4 points in schedule 1. Now analysis. Now we'll discuss these points in detail. See, there are instances where an activity of transaction is treated as supply even if the same is made without consideration. So there are instances when activity transaction is treated as supply even if it is made without consideration. So those instances which we have studied in schedule 1, they are talking about those instances. These are specifically mentioned in schedule 1 appended to CGST Act. The same has been discussed in subsequent paras. So in the pre-GST regime, in every statute, consideration played the most important role for levying taxes. In pre-GST regime, consideration was the most important role, played the most important role for levying the taxes. For instance, if any service was provided for free to a person, such service was not subjected to service tax. However, what is happening under GST? Under GST, the importance of consideration has been diluted in certain cases. This is an important departure from earlier indirect tax regime. The 4 scenarios which were discussed just now, in those 4 scenarios, consideration was not involved. It was free. Then also GST is levied in those cases. So under GST, what is happening? This consideration is, we can't say it is an important role for levying taxes. Yeah, it is an important role, but there are certain cases even if that is made for free, even if there is no consideration, then also GST is levied. So we can say that under GST the importance of consideration has been diluted, and that also in certain cases, not in all cases. So as per schedule 1, in the following 4 cases, activities made without consideration will be treated as supply under GST. First point, permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, para 1 of schedule 1. So what they have given, any kind of disposal or transfer of business assets made by an entity on permanent basis. Okay, if business assets are disposed of on a permanent basis, even though without consideration, that is qualified as supply. However, it is important to note that this provision would apply only if ITC has been availed on such assets. If the ITC has been availed on such assets, then only it is covered in schedule 1, and then only GST will be levied. Otherwise no, otherwise not. Therefore, in order to qualify supply under this para, the following conditions we can say this following condition needs to be satisfied, and this should be satisfied cumulatively, means all conditions. First one is that there must be disposal or transfer of business assets. Second is that the disposal must be permanent. Third one is that ITC must have been availed on such business assets. So these 3 cumulative conditions we can extract from this serial number 1. In view of the last condition stipulated above, the permanent transfer or disposal of following business assets without consideration will not be covered within this para, and this will not be deemed a supply. So what they have given, in view of the last condition stipulated above, means ITC point they are saying about. Permanent transfer disposal of following business assets without consideration will not be covered within this para, and thus will not be treated as supply. Means business assets on which ITC is blocked or not available under GST, or if business assets though eligible for ITC has not been availed by the registered person. Now they have extracted the third condition. They have said that though it is necessary that ITC must have been availed, then only it will be qualified as supply. But if business assets, or means if the ITC is blocked or ITC is not available under GST, that means third condition is not satisfied. So no supply, no GST. Or it may happen that though their business assets are eligible for ITC, but then also ITC has not been availed on such assets by registered person, then also we can say third condition is not satisfied. So then also no supply, no GST. Okay, so it is important to note that the term business asset has not been defined under GST law. So in this Roman 1 and 2 condition is there, either of one or two, any condition is there, so means no supply, no GST. These three conditions, you must remember these three conditions. These three conditions are very important. Now 14 number point. Not it's an example. Dhruv gives old laptops being used in the business to his friend free of cost. This will qualify as supply provided ITC has been availed by Dhruv on such laptops. This we can say is permanent disposal of assets, and it is free of cost, consideration is not involved. So we can say it is covered in point 1. So this will qualify as supply only if ITC has been taken, availed by Dhruv. Okay, availed by Dhruv means seller. Second example is dealer of air conditioners permanently transfer the motor vehicle free of cost. ITC on said motor vehicle is blocked. ITC has been blocked. Means ITC is not available. The transaction will not constitute a supply as the condition of availment of ITC on business asset transferred is not fulfilled. So as a third condition means ITC condition is not fulfilled, so it will not be constituted as supply. Okay, no supply, no GST. Example 15. Now this clause is wide enough to cover transfer of business assets from holding to subsidiary company for nil consideration. Means if assets is transferred from holding to subsidiary and it is transferred for nil consideration, then also it is covered under this clause. Now second point they have discussed in detail, supply between related person or distinct person, para 2 of schedule 1. Now supply of goods or services both between related person or between distinct person as specified in section 25 will qualify as supply even if made without consideration, provided it is made in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, it should be made between related or distinct person and it should be made in the course of furtherance of business, then only it will be qualified as supply and then only GST will be levied. Now let us understand the term related person and distinct person. Related person means a person who is under influence of another person is called related person, like members of same family, okay, or subsidiaries of a group company, etc. Under GST law, various categories of related person have been specified. The term related person has been defined in explanation to section 15. The said definition has been depicted by way of a diagram. Now for the definition of family, they have given C definition of family under relevant definitions that you can see from the definitions whole are there in family definition, and related person definition has been defined in explanation to section 15. Now related person means a person who is under the influence of another person. It includes members of family, it includes some subsidiaries of a group company. Okay, now related person, see the what is given in the explanation. Persons including legal persons are deemed as related person. It is given that the term related person is defined in the explanation to section 15. The said definition has been depicted with that definition they have given over here. See this. See the related person definition. Person including legal person are deemed as related person if such persons are officers or directors of one another's businesses. Okay, one another's businesses. If they are officers or directors of one another's businesses, suppose Mr. A is there and Mr. B is there. If Mr. A and Mr. B are officers or if they are directors of one another's businesses, then they are termed as related person. Such persons are legally recognized partners. Such person employer and employee. So a third person controls or owns or holds directly or indirectly more than equals to 25% of voting stock or shares of both of them. Means Mr. C is holding or controlling Mr. A and B. Is holding more than equals to 25% of the shares of both of the company of Mr. A and company of Mr. B. Now one of them controls the other. A third person controls both of them. Such person together control a third person, means Mr. A and Mr. B is together they are controlling Mr. C. Then such persons are members of the same family. One of them is the sole agent or sole distributor or sole concessionaire of the other. So these all are covered in related person. So these are the they have given these all are the related persons. So related person is clear. It's one who can influence the other, who is under the influence of another person is related person. So this was about related person. Now see the example. Miss Priya holds 30% shares of ABC Limited and 35% shares of XYZ Limited. So of ABC Limited, Priya holds 30% of XYZ Limited 35%. It is more than equal to 25%. So we can say that ABC Limited and XYZ Limited are related. Now next example is Q Limited has a deciding role in corporate policy, operations management and quality control of R Limited. it can be said that Q Limited controls R Limited. Thus Q Limited and R Limited are related. So what is given over here? Q Limited has a deciding role in the policy, corporate policy of R Limited, and it can be said that we can say that Q Limited is controlling R Limited. So thus Q Limited and R Limited are related, though influence is there. Means Q Limited is influencing R Limited, is controlling R Limited. See the first line, there is given under influence of another person. So and that is there, influence is there in this case, controlling is there. So now distinct person, now related person we have done the example also. Now distinct person is specified under section 25. Before we go through the statutory provisions of distinct person, let us have an overview of registration provisions. Okay, registration provisions for better understanding of the concept of the distinct provisions. First we'll understand about the provisions of registration in this case, then we'll understand about distinct persons. Now detailed and in-depth analysis of registration provisions contained in chapter 9, registration. Under GST law, a supplier is required to obtain state-wise registration. We all know that state-wise registration is there in GST. In every state you have to take the registration, and it is PAN-based registration. So he has to obtain registration every state or union territory from where he makes a taxable supply, provided his aggregate turnover exceeds a specified threshold limit. Only if the threshold limit, if only the turnover exceeds the threshold limit, then only it is compulsory to take the registration. Though voluntary registration concept is also there, even means you can take voluntary registration also. Means even if your turnover is below the threshold limit, then also you can take the registration, but that is different thing. We are not discussing about voluntary registration over here. So it is given that the state-wise registration is there, and he has to take registration in every state from where he makes taxable supply only if his turnover exceeds the specified threshold limit. Now thus he is not required to obtain registration from a state or union territory from where he makes a non-taxable supply. So since registration in GST is PAN-based, once a supplier is liable to register, he has to obtain registration in each of the state or union territories in which he operates and makes taxable supply under same PAN. Clear? So once supplier is liable to register, he has to obtain registration in each of the state from where he operates. Means suppose if the turnover exceeds the threshold limit, and suppose his business is spread in 4 states, so he has to take registration in all such states, because it is PAN based, from where he has to take registration in all such states from where he makes taxable supply. Further, he is normally required to obtain single registration in a state or UT. Suppose in a state, if you have 4 business verticals in a single state, you can take a single registration also and separate registration for each business vertical also. So however, where he has multiple place of business in a state or union territory, he has to obtain either to get a single registration. He has the option either to get a single registration for the said state or union territory, or to get separate registration for each place of business in such state or union territory. He can get single registration also, or he can get separate registration also for each such place of business. Now let us understand the concept of distinct person. Now establishment of person with separate registration, whether within the same state or union territory or in different state or union territory, are considered as distinct person. Now suppose in the same state, if any person has 4 business verticals, and if he has taken separate registration for each business vertical, and if supply is made between those business verticals within the same state, and so this will be called as supply between distinct person. Or it may happen that one registration they have taken in place A, and one registration is they have taken in another state. So if supply is made between these 2 places, then it will be called as supply between distinct person. Means separate registration is there within the state or outside the state, and if supply is made between these 2 places, then it will be considered as distinct person. Where a person having one registered establishment in a state or union territory has another establishment in a different state or union territory, and in this case not necessarily registered, the establishments are considered establishment of distinct person. See this thing properly. Suppose in state A a person is registered, in state B that person is also supplying from state B, but he is not registered in state B. Okay, but if a supply takes place from state A to state B, then also it will be treated as establishment of distinct person. Then also it will be treated as supply between distinct person, even though the second state is not registered. Okay. Now, statutory provisions relating to distinct person are contained in subsection 4 and 5 of section 25. They have been discussed as follow. A person who has obtained or is required to obtain more than one registration, whether in one state union territory or more than one state union territory, shall in respect of each such registration be treated as distinct person. Okay. Now, example number 18. Mohan, a chartered accountant, has a registered head office in Delhi. He has also obtained registration in the state of West Bengal in respect of his newly opened branch office. He has a registered office in Delhi. He has also obtained registration in West Bengal. Mohan shall be treated as distinct person in respect of registration in West Bengal and Delhi. Okay. So he has taken registration in Delhi also, he has taken registration in West Bengal also, though these two establishments are treated as establishment of distinct person. Further, where a person who has obtained or is required to obtain registration in a state or union territory in respect of an establishment has an establishment in another state or union territory, then such establishment shall be treated as establishment of distinct person. Further explanation 1 to section 8 of IGST Act stipulates that establishment of same entity shall be considered as establishment of distinct person where a person has establishment in means establishment of same entity. Though it is establishment of same entity, but it will be considered establishment of distinct person when this thing will happen when one establishment is in India and another establishment is in outside India. The establishment is of same entity. Suppose ABC and company establishment is there in India also and in outside India also. Though it is establishment of same entity, but then also it will be considered establishment of distinct person if one establishment is in India and another establishment is outside India. Okay. Then if one establishment in a state or union territory and another establishment is outside that state, then also it will be considered establishment of distinct person if one establishment in a state and another establishment is within that state only. Okay. Then also it will be treated as establishment of distinct person. Now, example 19. Rishabh Enterprises, a registered supplier, owns an air-conditioned restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra. It has opened a liquor shop in Raipur, Uttarakhand for trading of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Okay, he is a registered supplier. He owns restaurant in Virar, Maharashtra, and he opened liquor shop in Raipur, Uttarakhand. So, since a supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption in Uttarakhand is a non-taxable supply, so Rishabh Enterprise is not required to obtain registration with respect to the same in Uttarakhand because it was given that he has to take registration in the state from where he makes a taxable supply. So, he is making the supply from Uttarakhand, but that supply is non-taxable. So, he is not required to take registration in Uttarakhand. So, in this case, air-conditioned restaurant in Maharashtra and liquor shop, though that is unregistered in Uttarakhand, shall be treated as establishment of distinct person. This we have discussed earlier also. If one state is if one registration is done in Maharashtra, if one enterprise establishment is there in Maharashtra and second establishment is there in Uttarakhand, even though second establishment is unregistered, but it is in another state, so it will be treated as establishment of distinct person. Supply by Maharashtra restaurant to Uttarakhand shop in the course of furtherance of business even without consideration will qualify as supply. Now see the diagram. Registered restaurant is in Maharashtra, unregistered liquor shop is in Uttarakhand. It will be treated as establishment of distinct person, though the liquor shop in Uttarakhand is unregistered, but it is in another state now. That's why it is treated as establishment of distinct person. So if this registered restaurant in Maharashtra if makes any supply to the unregistered liquor shop in Uttarakhand, that will be treated as supply to a distinct person, so it will be termed as supply and no GST, means GST will be levied, but it should be made in the course of furtherance of business and if it is without consideration, so it is supply and GST will be levied. Now stock transfer or branch transfer qualify as supply. It is a common practice in business that one branch supplies services to another branch of same entity without consideration. Okay, stock transfer is there between the branches. Similarly, goods are transferred among different units of same entity free of cost. For instance, distribution of samples manufactured in a factory to different branches, or transfer of goods from factory to depot or showroom for sale. Therefore, from one warehouse to another warehouse, from one branch to another branch where the demand of the goods is higher. So these transactions are termed as self-supplies. Under GST, this transaction undertaken even without consideration will qualify as supply provided the transfer of goods or services is between. So if this branch transfer is there, stock transfer is taking place, and also it will be treated as supply and GST will be levied. Okay, though the credit can also be availed, but GST will be levied. It will be treated as normal supply, the stock transfer. Now what is given over here, even if it is made without consideration, it also qualifies supply provided the transfer of goods or services is between different locations with separate GST registration of same legal entity, as these are transaction between distinct person. Means condition is that it should be between different location, means separate GST registration is there of same legal entity, then only it will be treated as supply between distinct person, or these are establishments of distinct persons. Okay. For example 20, Raghubir Fabrics transfer 1000 shirts from his factory located in Lucknow to his retail showroom in Delhi. From factory in Lucknow is supplying to retail showroom in Delhi so that the same can be sold from there. The factory and retail showroom of Raghubir factory fabrics are registered in the states where they are located. Although no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom constitutes supply. Okay, no consideration is charged, but the supply is made between the distinct person. So this constitutes supply. The factory and retail showroom are registered in the state. They both are registered in the states. Even though the second state is not registered, then also it would have been treated as supply between distinct persons. See the diagram: registered Lucknow factory and registered Delhi showroom. The stock transfer is taking place. This is deemed supply. However, transfer between two units of legal entity under single registration, apparently within the same state. So, okay, this is apparently within the same state. This apparently within the same state will not be considered supply. This can be understood with the help of following example. Now, read this para again. However, if there is a transfer between two units of a legal entity under single registration, means within the same state, suppose within the same state there are two business verticals. Okay, those two business verticals are under the single registration. There is no separate registration. Single registration is only there of two units of a legal entity. So that will, if stock transfer is taking place between those two entities, those two establishments in the same state where single registration is there, so that will not be considered as supply. Why so? See, Raghubir Fabrics transfer 1000 shirts from his factory located in Lucknow to his retail showroom in Kanpur, so that the same can be sold from there. Difference from the earlier example and this example is that over there factory was in Lucknow and showroom was in Delhi. In this example, factory is in Lucknow and showroom is in Kanpur, means same state only. It has taken one registration in the state of UP, declaring Lucknow factory as its principal place of business and Kanpur showroom as its additional place of business. Since no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom the same state under single registration does not constitute supply, because we can't say this establishment or distinct person. It would have we would have said that this constitutes supply only if registered person would have taken separate registration for factory and showroom. If he would have taken separate registration for his factory and showroom, and in that case the stock transfer would have termed as supply and GST would have levied. But as there is only single registration, so it will not be the stock transfer between factory and showroom by factory to showroom is not treated as supply. Okay, since no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom in the same state under single registration does not constitute supply. Okay, now this will be seen from the normal supply point of view. So in though there is single registration, that's why it is not constituting supply. Suppose if consideration is charged, then it would have said as supply. Okay, since no consideration is charged, supply of goods from factory to retail showroom same state under single registration does not constitute supply. Now see the example: Lucknow factory, Kanpur showroom, stock transfer not a supply, single registration in UP. However, in the above example, Raghubir Fabrics obtained separate registration for Lucknow factory and Kanpur showroom. That what I said. If he would have taken separate registration for Lucknow factory and Kanpur showroom, stock transfer between Lucknow factory and Kanpur showroom will constitute supply. Now next one: molds and dies owned by original equipment manufacturers (OEM) that are sent free of cost to a component manufacturer and that are supplied, means they are sent free of cost in the course of furtherance of business, that will not be constituted as supply. Why? Since they are not related person, distinct person, and there is no consideration involved. Okay, this OEM means original equipment manufacturer and this component manufacturer are not related or distinct person. So as they are not related or distinct person, they are though it is supplying the course of business, but it is not between the related or distinct person, so it will not constitute supply. and if the consideration, suppose in this case if consideration was involved, then it would have constituted supply. Since no consideration is there, supply is not been a distinct related person, it is not supply, no GST will be levied. Now, supply of goods or services both between employer and employee. In terms of definition of related person given above, employer and employee are related person. Okay. However, services provided by an employer to employee to employer in the course of or in relation to his employment are not treated as supply. This will study in Schedule 3 of CGST Act. And these are not neither goods nor services. Means supply services are provided by employees. Employees providing any service to employee in the course of employment, that is not treated as supply. This is specifically covered in Schedule 3. That's why they have given here not treated as supply, because in Schedule 3 it is given specifically that if employee is providing any service to employer in the course of business, that is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Though as per the condition, means as per what we are studying now, as per Schedule 1, you can say that it is supply because it is in the course of business and it is between related person. But in Schedule 3 it is specifically given that service by employee to employee in the course of business is not supply. That's why it is not supply, no GST will be levied. Means when employee is providing service to employer and employee is paying consideration to employee, means in the form of salary, GST will not be charged on that. Now, gift by employer to employee. Further proviso to para 2 of Schedule 1. Gift by employer to employee. Further proviso to para 2 of Schedule 1 provides that gifts up to 50,000 in value in a financial year by an employer to an employee shall not be treated as supply of goods or services or both. Means if the gift value is up to 50,000, that it will not be treated as supply. However, gift of value more than 50,000, if it is made without consideration, then it will be called as supply and subjected to GST when made in the course of furtherance of business. Okay. Now, the term gift has not been defined in GST law. In common parlance, gift is made without consideration, is voluntary in nature. It is made occasionally. It cannot be demanded as a matter of right by the employee, and the employee cannot move a court of law for obtaining a gift. Okay, so this they have given in common parlance. Its actual definition of gift is not there in GST. Now, perquisites by employer to employee. As already discussed, the services by an employee to employer in the course of or in relation to his employment is outside the scope of GST. Means that is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. It follows therefore that payment made by employer to employee in the terms of contractual agreement entered between the employer and employee will not be subjected to GST. Means if the employee provides any service to employer and the course of means in return for that service employer is paying any payment, providing consideration to the employee, then that will not be subjected to GST. So it follows therefore that the payment made by employer to employee in terms of contractual agreement entered into between the employer and employee will not be subjected to GST. Ministry of Finance has clarified in a press release on 10/7/2017 that if services such as membership of a club, health and fitness center, etc. are provided free of charge to all the employees by the employer, the same will not be subjected to GST. Means what is given clarified in press release, means if services like membership of a club, health and fitness center, these services are provided free of charge, this membership and health and fitness center service, these all services are provided, if these are provided free of charge to all the employees by the employer, then the same will not be subjected to GST. So this employer is providing, we can say perquisite is provided by employer to employee. So this is perquisite by employer to employee. So this is not subjected to GST. The same hold true for free housing to the employees. If free housing services provided to employees, means when the same is provided in the terms of contract between the employer and employee, and it is part and parcel of the CTC of cost to company, means many employers provide housing facility to the employees, so that is also, we can say, that is perquisite by employer to employee, so that is also not subjected to GST. Okay, so this completes our part 2 of this chapter supply under GST. So next part you will get very soon. So this completes our part 2, and part 1 we have already done before, detailed discussion. So if you have any query relating to what I've just taught in this video or in the last video, so if you have any query, do let me know in the comment section. And if you want me to cover any specific topic or any specific section, then please do let me know. I'll surely cover that. Okay, thanks for watching. Happy studying. Bye bye, take care.